class 10. It is English 1 today, chapter 5, sequence of tenses. Okay, sequence of tenses. Here you can see I have written down in my copy, sequence of tenses. So here the sequence of tenses, what is it? It is a principle, okay, according to which the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, it follows. The tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, it follows what? The tense of the verb in the principal clause. Okay. And there are two main rules. There are two main rules to follow it. Which are the two main rules? The first rule is, I have written down the example here. The first rule is, you can see in the books, if the principal clause is in the present or future tense. If the principal clause is in the present or future tense, then what happens? The tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, it can be past, present or future. It can be what? Past, present or future, depending on the sense conveyed. See the example here. The example, he says that he went to Patna. He says that he went to Patna. He says, it is a principal clause. That he went to Patna, it is subordinate clause. So according to rule 1, if the principal clause is in the present or future tense, says, it is in which tense? Present tense. Then the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, then the tense of the verb, this part is the subordinate clause, then the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, it can be what? It can be in the present, past or future, depending on the sense which it conveys. So here it is in which tense? It is in the past tense. Okay, it is in the past tense. Now here you will find that whenever a subordinate clause, it expresses what? A purpose, a condition or a time. Okay, it expresses purpose, condition or time. Then what happens? The verb, it is always in the present tense. Even if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or future tense. Okay. So here, even if the verb is in the principal clause is in the present or future tense, but in the subordinate clause, if it is expressing what? Purpose, condition or time, then it will be in which tense? It will always be in the present tense. It will always be in the present tense. The subordinate clause, verb will be in the present tense. Even if the principal clause is what? It is in the present or future tense. Okay, this is the condition. Now the second rule. In the second rule, you can see in the book that the past tense in the principal clause must be followed by a tense of the past time only. It must be followed by a tense in the past time only. Means any form of the past tense. Okay, any form of in the past tense. The past tense in the principal clause, here you can see, he said. Said is what? It is in the past tense. It must be followed by a tense of the past time in the subordinate clause. Subordinate clause is that he had finished the work. Had finished, it is what? Past perfect tense. Okay, it is which tense? Past perfect tense. So as I said, according to the second rule, in the subordinate clause, the tense will be in what? Tense of the verb will be in any of the past form. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. Okay, exceptions to this rule. That is rule number 2. What are the exceptions? A past tense in the principal clause, it may be followed by a present tense in the subordinate clause. In which condition? When it is expressing some habitual action or universal fact. Okay, in which condition it will be? When it is expressing habitual action or universal fact. But here the rule we know that if the principal clause is in the past tense, then the subordinate clause is also in any of the form of the past tense. But what is the exception? The principal clause, if it can be followed by a subordinate clause in the it can be followed by a present tense in the subordinate clause. In which condition? When it is expressing some habitual action or universal fact. For example, she said is what? Past tense. That honesty is the best policy. It is expressing what? It is expressing the truth, isn't it? That honesty is the best policy. So here it is in the present tense. All right. Then the next condition is when the subordinate clause is introduced by some conjunction. Okay, some conjunction of comparison. So like, for example, than, THAN, than. Then what happens? Then this rule, it does not apply. Okay, any tense can be followed by any tense. See the example. She will like you better than she likes me. Okay, here than is what I have written in my copy. Than is what? See here, I like Rita better than you liked her. So here in this sentence you can see that the subordinate clause, it is introduced by what? It is introduced by than. So whenever a subordinate clause is introduced by what? Some conjunction of comparison, for example than, then what happens? Then this rule, it does not apply. And so any tense can be followed by any tense. That is why here it is like. Like is in the present tense, and here liked, it is in the past tense. All right. Then you can see the third exception, when the subordinate clause is an adverb clause. Okay, when the subordinate clause is an adverb clause, denoting what? Denoting place, reason or comparison. Then what happens? Then it may be in any tense as required by the sense. Okay, as required by the sense. So here sequence of what? Sequence of tense. That is why it is what? Sequence of tenses. It has two rules. You have to keep these two rules in mind. Okay, and also you are going to copy down these two rules in your language copy and do the assignment which is given on page number 82. Assignment which is given on page number 82. This you will do. First, show it to me in your WhatsApp. 1 or 2 can show, and then I am going to check and give you the correct answers. But see that everyone does it.